You also want to use accountability. Now, I talked about accountability in setting priorities. I think it's also important to have a routine that actually drives accountability. One of the things I do with my clients, I strongly recommend this to everyone in the room. If you just have a 1-hour monthly meeting where you sit down and look at the goals that you set for the year and how you're doing with them, and talk about how we're contributing to achieving those goals, you're going to find your company moves forward a lot better, because it is hard for people to ignore a goal when they know that someone's going to sit down in a meeting and ask, hey, what are you doing to contribute to our company meeting this goal this year every month? The other thing that's very important with distractions, and this is something I learned years ago, have a place to park the distractions. Now, I do strategic planning, so the biggest distraction in strategic planning is all the good ideas that come up when we talk about where our company could go. And one of the things I like to tell people, and we'll come up with some really fun stuff. I've come up with fun stuff in my own company. And I have sometimes people in my company who say, hey, Robert, that's a bright, shiny object. It's an interesting idea, but let's park that in the place where we put the stuff that we're going to do next year, or we're going to think about next year. Because you can only do so many things. So have a place to put the bright, shiny objects if you can. Next area, dealing with overload. Here, I'm going to give you a rule of thumb, and this is a number, and it's a number that I find to be very useful. And I'll give you a range. It's a guideline, really. You want the right number of goals for your business. That number probably should be somewhere between 3 and 8. Now, I think in my company this year I have 7. It's probably one too many, but then I tend to be a little over-enthusiastic about this sort of thing. I used to tell people you should just have up to 10 and never set more than 10. What I find is that if I tell you you can have 10 goals, how many goals do you think you're going to set? 10, okay? And the problem with that is, for many people in this room, you should have 4 or you should have 5. And if you set 10 goals, what will happen is you will get halfway done with 10 goals where you would get all the way done with 5 goals. So limit yourself to the number of goals. And if you're worried that you're leaving something off the table that's really critical, just remember, you can park it in the area where you're putting the stuff you're going to do next year. That's cool. And if you're very effective in your execution and you get all 4 of the goals you set done, you can move on to number 5. You can move on to number 6, and that's okay. But what you don't want to do is get this situation where you're 20% done with a large number of goals. I think it's really important to actually get the goal done before you move on. The next thing you want to defend yourself from, and this is something I've faced in my own business quite a bit, you want to defend your business from stealth goals. Stealth goals are things that creep onto the page. They creep into your business life without being considered, without being prioritized, without being discussed with the people who you set goals with normally. And stealth goals can become huge. They can eat your company alive if you allow them to. It's very important that there be somebody with the authority in your business to say, listen, that's a stealth goal that's creeping in here. We need to sit down as a group and talk about whether we do this or not. And if you're only supposed to have 5 goals, then we have to talk about which of the goals we're working on right now are we going to put on the back burner so we can work on this new one that came up. I think it's a very critical step for some of you. And then the last thing I want you to think about is avoid setting goals that are what I would call an eat an elephant goal. So the way you write a goal can actually affect its executability. An eat an elephant goal is it's exactly that. It's eat an elephant. One of the things I find with a lot of companies I work with is I say you can only have 5 goals, and so they'll set one goal, which is goal number 1, assure our company has optimal growth, profitability, and employee satisfaction for the next 10 years. Well, that's a great goal to have. It's almost impossible to execute. And if you said, well, how would you do that? You would have to break it into a lot of component slices, each of which would be a quite substantial goal all by itself. So set yourself substantial goals, that's good, but don't set goals so big that you can't do them. I like people to think about goals that they can get to in the next 12 to 18 months when they're setting goals. I find it fits with our planning horizon. It also helps us to avoid trying to do the impossible. Most people don't try to come up with world peace or something like that in 12 months. Now, dealing with psychology, a lot of what happens when you are setting goals and either getting them done or not getting them done is actually stuff that's going on inside your head. And if you expect that you can get a goal done, you will get a goal done. And if you understand exactly what you're trying to get to, you're going to get to that too. I'm reminded of a client of mine several years ago that when he first came to me, I said to him, what do you want to get out of your strategic planning? And he said, I want to double the size of my company. And of course, we did strategic planning, doubled the size of my company. He came back to me a year later and complained. Now, what do you think he complained about? Well, he complained because he doubled the size of the company, but what he complained about was, our margins have gone down. And I said, well, funny, that tends to happen. You know what? If your number one objective is growth, your profitability is going to suffer. If your number one objective is profitability, your growth is going to suffer. It's as simple as that. And when I asked you what you wanted, you said you wanted to double the size of the company. I can't double the size of your company and also pay attention to the profitability number at the same time. It's just something that anybody who pretends they can do that either has like a magic wand that I'd love to get my hands on, or they're lying to you. So make sure that you understand the psychology, understand what you're actually going for, and write it down very specifically. The first point here, write SMART objectives. You might want to write this down. I use this acronym. It's a fairly common one. SMART means specific, measurable, achievable result that is time-related. It is a specific, measurable, achievable result that is time-related. So when we say specific and measurable, I want to be able to ask you, did you get this done or did you not get it done? And have you be able to objectively measure and say, yes, I did it, or no, I did not do it. Achievable, of course, means it has to be realistic. Result means it's what you get out of doing the goal or doing the activities. It is not an activity in itself. It is not the result of installing a new piece of computer software. It is the capability you get from that software and what you get out of having that capability that I'm looking for. It's a really important distinction. It's a little funny. I don't really have time to get into it, but stating objectives as results is one of those things that some of you may need to spend some time thinking about. And the last item, time-related. Remember I said earlier you want to set a deadline for yourself. With no deadline, there's no urgency. Create the urgency by making your objective time-related. If you write your objectives down specifically, psychologically, you're much more likely to plan your implementation activities so they actually fit into achieving the objective. Very cool thought process that's going on there. I've noticed time and time again, if we don't write good objectives, we often get poor implementation. Second item, have achievement reviews. Now, I speak about achievement reviews. Sometimes people talk about these as progress reviews or status reports. I like to think of it as an achievement review for one reason. Psychologically, if I call it an achievement review, when we sit down once a month and talk about where you're going on your goals, you're going to say, I want to be able to come into that meeting and talk about what I have achieved. And the meeting is going to be about what I've achieved. That's a very cool thought process. If it's status report, the status could be good, it could be bad, it might not be an achievement. Psychologically, you feel a little more like it's okay to go in and say you did a bad job on your execution.